The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, this is Tom Lane, DM2 Software's Vice President of Sales and Marketing. I would like to welcome everyone to today's Internal Controls Early Warning Systems webinar. This is part one of a three-part series. Before I introduce today's presenter, I would like to go over a few housekeeping items. Because of the number of attendees we have on today's webinar, everyone's phones will stay on mute. If you have any questions during the webinar, please enter them into the question window that you see in the lower right of your screen. We'll try to get to everyone's questions at the end of the webinar. If we're unable to get to everyone's questions before our time runs out, we'll follow up with each of you individually after the webinar. Today's webinar is being recorded. As soon as the recording is available, we will post it on our YouTube channel and our website, along with a copy of the presentation slides. And then I'll send everybody a message to let them know when they're available to be downloaded or viewed. On that note, I would like to introduce today's presenters. We have Patty Hendrickson is going to be our main presenter. Patty is a professional service consultant, and joining her today are two of our newest consultants, Laurel Stover and Steve Silkaitis. On that note, I'll hand it over to you, Patty, and we can get things going.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today to learn more about internal controls. Today, we will cover an overview of internal controls, key GL accounts for daily audit, key control reports for posted transactions, and key controls for reviewing profit exceptions. As Tom had mentioned, we have three classes we'll be doing, three of these webinars. And in those three webinars, we're going to be covering three separate areas. Today, we're focusing on posted transactions, so after you've updated. Next month, we'll be looking at as you're posting your transactions, so in process. And then our final part of this three-part series, we'll be going over preventative measures. So with that said, let's go ahead and dive right in. Internal control is a crucial aspect of an organization's governance system and its ability to manage risk. It is also fundamental to supporting the achievement of an organization's objectives and creating, enhancing, and protecting stakeholder value. High-profile organizational failures typically lead to imposition of additional rules and requirements, as well as subsequent time-consuming and costly compliance efforts. However, this obscures the fact that the right kind of internal controls, enabling an organization to capitalize on opportunities while offsetting the threats, can actually save time and money and promotes the creation and preservation of value. Effective internal control also creates competitive advantages, as an organization with effective controls can take on additional risks. Despite the existence of sound internal control guidelines, it is often the application of the guidelines that fail or could be further improved within organizations. For purposes of this presentation, we are going to be focusing on control activities, specifically process controls as they relate to DM2 and MAS 100 ERP. Process controls are important to your business because they provide data integrity, audit preparation, and disaster recovery procedures. Having processes in place allows for consistent data processing and leads to consistent results. Audit checklists often require process flowcharts, decision trees, and process documentation. Having these controls in place allows you to be prepared for your audit. Have you ever heard, prepare for the worst but expect the best? Having process controls in place also helps to prepare you for disaster recovery. With proper processes and controls in place, the impact of a national disaster can be minimized within your organization. Data integrity refers to maintaining and ensuring the accuracy and consistency of data over its entire life cycle, and it is a critical aspect to the design, implementation, and usage of any system that stores, processes, or retrieves data like DM2 and Sage 100 ERP. Take a look at the chart and notice the following. 46% of businesses indicate that their processes are built around internal control processes. 36 indicate that the internal controls are built around the processes. 7% do not have any internal control processes, and 11% are unsure as to whether they have internal control processes or not, which probably means that they belong in the last category. So about 18% of businesses do not have internal control processes. Take a moment and identify with which category you identify with the most. If your processes are built around internal controls, data integrity will increase and the value of the financial data you provide will be more accurate. Additionally, the less errors that are made, the quicker you'll be able to close your book. So you're saying, Patty, we know we need to have data integrity, but how do we do this? Run periodic audits of your data to ensure data integrity. Test new processes and transactions in a test company and document them. Validate transactions when you update them. As automation increases, transactional throughput and the need for auditing and reconciling becomes increasingly important. Best practices recommend more frequent audits and reconciliations to minimize the impact of problems and to also narrow the time window to research and find a resolution. One fundamental accounting practice is to tie key balance sheet subsidiary reports to their GL accounts for the period. The end-of-day audit validates 5 key control accounts: open accounts receivable invoices, inventory valuation, open accounts payable invoices, purchases clearing reports for fuels, which is the bill of ladings that have been updated but not invoiced, and the purchases clearing non-fuels, which are the purchase orders received but not invoiced. Many leading firms have adopted end-of-day procedures to increase audit frequency and streamline end-of-month procedures. However, workflow procedures and pressures sometimes challenge the execution of the daily procedures. The end-of-day audit is used to automate checking if the subsidiaries tie to their GL control total for the 5 key control accounts. Each day, a summary email like the one shown here is sent to a distribution list with the last information on each balance sheet account, whether it's in balance or not. Once set up, this feature, which compares subsidiary values to GL control accounts and emails the results to interested parties, is completely transparent to the users. By complementing the controller's audit process with more frequent automated reconciliation, the controller is freed from the burden of performing daily audits manually and can address exceptions as they occur. By resolving issues as they arise throughout the month, the end-of-month process itself is streamlined, leading to quicker and more accurate closings and financial reporting. Please note, this tool is not meant to replace the controller's responsibility to perform these key audits, but it's meant as a tool to help augment their work. An example would be to let the system perform these audits daily, and the controller will perform their official audits weekly or monthly. The important thing is to take action when there is a variance. So just to look at the end-of-day audit email here, what I want to focus on is the column G through K here. And give me just a second. Okay, here we have a laser pointer. Okay, here is the module and the list of each of the modules that it's monitoring. This is the subsidiary value, so this is what you would find if you ran the report out in the subsidiary module. And the GL value is what you would find for the GL account balance. This column J shows you anything that's in process, so would be in your daily transaction register. And this variance calculates the difference of the subsidiary value, the GL value, and takes into account any in-process posting. You'll notice here that we have two different company codes that are being posted on, and that it shows you also the date that it was sent, the time that it was sent, or that the last posting occurred, as well as the year and the period for the module. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Steve and Laurel to go over some key control reports for posted transactions.
Thanks, Patty. As Patty had previously mentioned, the most effective manner in balancing your subsidiary reports to your general ledger is to perform your reconciliations on a more frequent basis, so you're only dealing with a smaller number of days' worth of transactions in order to sift through. The general ledger trial balance report is one of those. At its most simplistic form, it allows you to go ahead and confirm that your financial statements are in balance. You can utilize a trial balance report to verify that your subsidiary ledgers or reports match your general ledger balance. If they don't match, you can run the general ledger detail report. The general ledger detail report is one tool to finding and correcting out balance situations and to find any missing or duplicate journal entries. Each posting has its own unique source journal number, which can be researched by using the general ledger detail by source report. You can print the general ledger detail report for all batches, all journals, and for the date range of the period that's out of balance. Or limit your review to specific batches, journals, journal sources, or a number of other fields that can be filtered on. The general ledger exception report can help you with your reconciliations as well. It gives you the ability to look at inactive accounts with activity. If you operate in an older version of MAS, you can also see deleted accounts that might have activity. You can also ensure the correct debit or credit balance is in line with a given asset or liability account by choosing to view assets with credit balances and or choosing liabilities with debit balances. This may point out to an incorrect account that was used for posting. The Reprint Journal Report gives you the ability to look at journal entries already posted. Many times the general journal is the source for a misclass entry resulting in a subsidiary GL out of balance situation. As the case in all the reports we've discussed, you have the ability to refine your report via filtering. So we can limit our selection to just general journals to view only the potential transactions causing our out-of-balance situation. You have the ability to perform your bank reconciliation with DM2 in the bank reconciliation module. You no longer need to perform your bank recs offline via Excel spreadsheets. The bank reconciliation report will pull in all of your cash-related activity from the applicable modules. It will also show you your adjustments. Now Laurel's going to go ahead and talk to you about other key reports for reconciliation related to inventory, sales, and bills of lading.
Thank you, Steve. I'm going to start with the sales recap report, which I ran by warehouse and product line. This report will give you an overview by product line, what your average profit margin was for the month, as well as for the year. By monitoring this report, it's a quick and easy way to know if your margins are in line with your expectations. And you can see on here that the month-to-date and the year-to-date is there. And on the next slide, we're going to see the inventory valuation report. This report determines the current value of the on-hand quantity for each item. Run this report daily to verify that the fuel balances in each warehouse are correct. You are ensuring that the quantity on hand in each warehouse is correct, that you don't have a product in a warehouse that you shouldn't, and that you have no negative. You will also want to verify that the unit cost is correct. In my example, you will see that there are 2 warehouses with negative inventory balances and 1 warehouse with a unit cost that is out of line because it's at $9 a gallon. On the next slide, you will see that I ran the inventory detail transaction report to find out why we have a warehouse with fuel in it at $9 a gallon. The inventory detail transaction report provides a listing of all detail activity and can be ran by a specific date range, warehouse number, and product line. If you run the report for the entire month, it will display the beginning on-hand balance followed by every transaction posted, including sales, receipts, issues, adjustments, and transfers. In my example, I used the warehouse with the $9 a gallon of gasoline to find the details of that transaction. As you can see, there was a bill lading entered with a unit cost of $9 a gallon. You can also use this report when one of your warehouse items is out of balance. This report will give you all of the transactions in detail where you can verify if they are correct. The next slide shows the inventory trial balance. If you're having trouble balancing your inventory to the GL, one of the best ways to determine where the out of balance originated from is to compare the trial balance report from the GL to the trial balance report in the subsidiary module, in this case inventory. As you can see, it lists the beginning balance, all activity, and the ending balance for the units on hand and for the dollar amount on hand. On the next slide, we have the bill of lading history report. This report provides you with a list of all bill of ladings that have been entered into MAS. It can be ran by a date range, supplier number, and invoiced or not through AP. If you have an invoice from your supplier and you cannot find it in AP, you can run this report to see if the bill of lading was entered using the wrong bill of lading number, maybe it was transposed, wrong date, or maybe the bill of lading doesn't exist in MAS at all. In my example, I ran the report for 1 day for all gas products that had not been invoiced through AP. Now, I'm going to hand this back over to Patty.
Thank you, Laurel. Once internal control processes and procedures have been put into place, they must be monitored in order to ensure proper processing and data integrity continue. This is often called feedback loops. 2 reporting tools that you can use to review profit exceptions are ProfitLink and the DM2 SQL warehousing solution. ProfitLink is a management reporting tool used for browsing and data analysis. ProfitLink is built in Excel using pivot tables, sorting, and drill-down features. It is a standalone extract and can be used to create custom pivot tables. Managers can find patterns and correlations, and it allows management to respond with complete and factual information. ProfitLink can be run from the Mass menus, and the data is available immediately. In this example, you can review your sales by quantity, sales extension, and gross margin extension by customer type. This allows you to look at what customer types are most profitable. As you can see down in here, you've got each of the tabs that ProfitLink automatically generates for you. ProfitLink is also a sales reporting tool. It provides multiple ways of looking at data via the standard report. You can look at gross margin by customer type, by sales rep, by warehouse, by product line by customer. You can look at sales by customer and a customer ranking, as well as the gross margin spread. The gross margin category by product line, also known as the gross margin spread, allows you to save time by reviewing only exceptions based on the ranges of the gross margin category. Have you heard of the Pareto rule? Most people call it the 80-20 rule, but it's also known as the law of vital few and principal factor of scarcity. So next time you're on Jeopardy, you'll have the answer to that question, and you're very welcome. What this means in easier form is 80% of your sales come from 20% of your customers. The drill down by customer rank can help you review this rule for your organization. The Cardlink Gross Profit Exception and Analysis tool allows you to review your Cardlink transactions for margin before they're invoiced. By reviewing margins, you can identify pricing, costing, or taxing issues early on to ensure controls over your procedures. In your system, this may be called the pricing-only option. It depends on the version. This also has a drill down feature like ProfitLink and generates multiple tabs and views. Controls should always be designed, implemented, and applied as a response to specific risks and their causes and consequences. Management should ensure that regular communication regarding the internal control system as well as the outcomes take place at all levels within the organization to make sure that internal control principles are fully understood and correctly applied by all. Both individual controls as well as the internal control system as a whole should be regularly monitored and evaluated. Identification of unacceptably high levels of risk, control failures, or events that are outside of the limits for risk-taking could be a sign that an individual control or internal control system is ineffective and needs improvement. One way to apply these rules of internal control is through the DM2 SQL warehousing solution. SQL allows for easy access to data as well as quick access to data, and it uses a familiar interface. Most of our customers use Excel, and some use Crystal reports. Through use of these tools, you can use a graph for the results to have a more visual analysis. One of the main differences between ProfitLink and SQL is that SQL allows for multiple periods, whereas ProfitLink reports on one period at a time. Evaluating gross margin in trends allows management to keep an eye on the performance of the organization. So if, for instance, you sold one of an inventory item last month, it doesn't mean much until you find out you sold 10,000 of the same item in the prior month. By using DM2 SQL warehousing solution, you can drill down on anomalies and research based on the information that comes to your attention. Analyzing gallons allows you to analyze your business on a consistent volume regardless of the size of the package. Reviewing by the business line, sales representative, customer type, or many other options, you can drill into where the volume in your company is changing and identify any trends that may be occurring. Often after reviewing volume trends, managers start looking at margin per unit. For instance, if you have lost that 10,000 items of sales on the product that produces a penny per gallon margin, you may not be as concerned as losing 10 gallons of sales on something that you make $1,000 of margin on. DM2 SQL warehousing solution allows you to monitor the company's assets through multiple vantage points. Another way salespeople use to protect one of the company's most important assets, the customer base, is to review the sales by looking at a customer analysis in SQL. By looking at a year-over-year result by month, you can review when customers have stopped buying, and a salesperson can get in contact with that customer. Based on DM2 customer feedback, this report is one of the most wanted reports to protect the petroleum marketer's assets. Another way to protect the company's assets is through the analysis of the product sales. Many companies tie up too much money in inventory that becomes obsolete or values drop. This leads to losses for the company either through write-offs or sales below the cost. The product analysis report allows you to see what product lines and inventory items are moving more quickly and may need more frequent purchase, as well as slower moving inventory items that may need to be ordered in smaller quantities and on a drop ship basis, or maybe not even at all. Thank you for joining us today as we went over internal controls, early warning system, and ways to use your existing software for internal control purposes. To recap, we went over internal controls and what they are. We went over data integrity and their relationship to the control environment. We went over the end-of-day audit and why you would use this tool. Several Stage 100 ERP subsidiary reports for reviewing the posted transactions, as well as reviewing gross margin via ProfitLink and DM2 SQL warehousing. We hope you found this webinar helpful and inspiring to put internal controls in place in your organization. And we want you to know that coming soon, DM2 University will be offering internal control classes, how to put internal controls in place at your business.
All right, great. Thank you, Patty. As for those of you who have attended our previous webinars, this is where we put in a plug for next month's webinar. As Patty and I mentioned earlier, this is a three-part series on internal controls. Part 2 is scheduled to take place on May 15th, Thursday, at 11:30 a.m. Pacific Time, 1:30 Central Time. We try, just so you know, you probably noticed the pattern. We usually shoot for the second Thursday of the second full week of the month. We try to avoid getting too close to the beginning of the month or the end of the month for obvious reasons, because we know you're all tied up trying to put all these internal controls in place at that time. But anyway, this next part, as Patty mentioned earlier, really allows you to take advantage of tools while you're in the system working and processing transactions. So mark your calendars. I will be sending out an invitation to this webinar later this afternoon. But again, it's going to be Thursday, May 15th at 11:30 Pacific, 1:30 Central Time. So we'll look forward to having you all join us for that webinar as well. Now we can open it up to any questions that you may have. So feel free to go ahead and type in some questions there. I'd also like to mention this is probably one of the best turnouts we've ever had for one of our webinars. So we were pretty pleased to see that obviously the topic resonates with a lot of you. All right, the first question we've got comes in from Larry over at Cosby, and he is asking, are Cardlock customers and data available through ProfitLink? So Cardlock customer data available through ProfitLink?
If the data is pushed and updated through sales order invoice, then it will be through there. Through the SQL warehousing, you would be able to write a query or a view to merge the transactions for Cardlock and sales order together without having to update through sales order.
Okay, Larry, hopefully that answers your question there. I'm not seeing any other questions at this time. I know that was a lot to take in, and as always, if you think of any questions after the webinar, feel free to email us at sales@dm2.com, and we'll make sure that our salespeople work with our professional service consultants to get you answers to your questions there. Here we go. We've got another question coming in from Larry for more clarification. He's saying, so no reports are already available or only through custom report writing?
Well, we did go over the gross margin analysis tool in Cardlock, and that would be one way you could look at your Cardlock transactions. Really, when you're looking at margins and researching what's going on in the transactions, we have that for Cardlock kind of divided out so that it's the pre-invoice run that you're looking at it there, and that's what we looked at today. To merge the two together, if you update your Cardlock invoices through sales order, so you update, there's a process to update through sales order, then you could find those transactions in ProfitLink.
Okay. We're starting to get quite a few more questions come in now. Next one is from Jennifer over at CFI. I am aware that you can limit a user's available posting time frame to the current month and 1 month forward. Is there a way to limit posting to only dates within the current fiscal year?
Current fiscal year. I'd have to look at that. Let me go look and see what the actual options are on that, but I do know what she's saying originally, the current and previous year is generally what it is. Just going to make a note on that.
Okay, so is that something you'll follow up with Jennifer on afterwards?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Next question is from Tara over at Maxi. Are there instructions to set up ProfitLink?
Actually, ProfitLink doesn't require any setup. It may be called on your menu the ProfitLink Performance Analyzer. It's on the Accounts Receivable Reports menu toward the bottom, and you literally just click on it, and it'll ask for a date, and that will prompt what month and year you get the information for, because ProfitLink is just that 1 month view. So whether you put in April 1st, 2014 or April 17th, 2014, you'll still get the April of 2014. So that's a really easy module to put into place really quickly.
Okay, excellent. All right, the next question is from Debbie over at Star Oil. She is asking, is there documentation on how to balance PC fuel?
There is documentation on how to do that, and actually I'll let Laurel talk a little bit about that bill of lading history report and how she's used that.
Yeah, I've used it for, normally it would be if I got an invoice coming into AP and I can't find it, and I go in and run the report, and I'm looking for those gallons from that supplier. It could be on a wrong date. It could have been, like I said, transposed. So I also can then balance out, you know, by supplier, by product, what I bought. I don't know if that answers her question.
Just maybe something I would add is the bill of lading reconciliation report. And what you want to do is the purchases clearing GR account is the balance of all of the bill of ladings that are in process. And so what you want to do is on the bill of lading history or the bill of lading reconciliation report, look at all the open invoices, and then you would go through and just compare, okay, these are my bill of ladings that are open according to my report, and these are the GL postings that are open over there. I hope that answers your question, gives you a few different ways to look at it.
Okay. Debbie, if you could type in and let us know if that satisfies you, answers your question, that would be helpful. Next question is from Beth over at Nelson Petroleum, and Beth is asking, can we now update Cardlock through sales order, and if so, how?
You know, what we want to do in that kind of situation is you probably want to talk to a specific consultant to talk about maybe there's reasons that your business didn't do that or cannot do that. But if you're updating from Cardlock into sales order, that's how the records get out into ProfitLink. But that's kind of something that I wouldn't recommend just going out and doing. I'd talk to a consultant about it first, specifically one who's familiar with any custom programming. And one thing, Tom, before we go to the next question, is that part of the getting into how to do the reconciliation, giving us, you know, an hour to talk about that gets us, that's why we broke it into 3 seminars, is to kind of talk about here's some tools to do it. But getting into how to do it, that's what those classes we're going to do is really going to focus on, is getting into here's this report and then finding some problems in a sample database, and it'll be a hands-on class. And so if the information that you're getting here is showing you, okay, I've got this report and now it's a little bit of a challenge, I don't know what to do next, at that point I would say that signing up for the reconciliation classes, those internal control classes, would be a big benefit for that.
Okay. All right. We'll make sure we get everybody information on those classes when we get the schedule out. Debbie got back to us and said, thanks, that gave us some ideas on where to go. If you recall, she had asked, is there documentation on how to balance PC fuel? All right, the next question is from Kyle over at EdStob, and this is another documentation question. Kyle's asking, is there documentation on how to limit user posting timeframes?
I think that's the question that I'm going to get back to Jennifer on. So that's Kyle at EdStob.
Right, and just so everyone knows, whenever you type in a question here, it actually gets recorded on a report that I generate right after the webinar is over. So I'll supply Patty with that report, so she'll have exactly who asked what, and she can follow up with anybody if we haven't had the opportunity to answer your question right now. So I'll work with you on that, Patty.
Okay, that's
all right. The next question is from Angie over at Downs. What versions will be covered in the reconciliations? Are you going to cover version 4.3? I believe she's referring to the class that you're working.
The standard reconciliation tools are in every version. And so if there's a report that maybe gets added, I'll make sure to cover that. But the basic reports for reconciliation, such as the accounts receivable, aged invoice report, and comparing that back to the general ledger trial balance, all those exist all the way back to the very early versions of Mass 90 that none of us are on anymore. So we'll be focusing the software on the current version. And at this point, the current version is 4.50. And that we generally try to do our classes on whatever the current version is, but it really wouldn't make too much of a difference, if any at all, for that class. What we really want to do is no matter what version you're on, we want you to have those tools. And those classes will be very intense. You'll get a lot of information. But in the classes, you'll walk away with a lot of tools that are not version specific.
Okay. So in other words, 4.3 customers are going to benefit just as much from any other version customer.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Okay, I haven't seen another question come in, so we might be winding down here. I'll give it 30 more seconds if anybody else has any other questions. And as I said, if you think of something after we conclude today's session, you can always email us at sales@dm2.com. All right, we'll start to wrap things up then. I just want to remind everybody today's webinar has been recorded. Once the recording is available, I'm sorry, another question just came in. Let me go ahead and take care of that since we have the time. Another question from Larry over at Cosby. Are there any reports that can be used in Mass 100? And then, no, he's saying, sorry, Mass 200.
And remind me, what is that question in reference to? Is that the ProfitLink question?
Larry, if you could expand on that, that would be helpful.
And I guess we have Mass 90, Mass 200, Sage 100, ERP. I apologize. I've been with DM2 for 11 years, and so I kind of, as long as I'm not calling it best, I consider it a good day.
Well, just to clarify for everybody, you know, Sage has rebranded. They've come up with a whole new naming scheme. They now refer to Mass 90 and Mass 200 as Sage 100 ERP. 90 is referred to as the standard version, and then 200 is now referred to as the advanced version. So if you hear us say Sage 100 ERP standard, we're really talking about the old Mass 90. And if you hear us say Mass 100 ERP advanced, we are talking about Mass 200. And then as you'll find out when we come out with our new release, there will be a third version, and that will be Sage 100 ERP Premium. And that gives you the ability to use SQL as your database versus the current ProvideX database. So you'll be finding out a lot more about that soon. But Larry's said, heard that you can do some card lock reports from Mass 200. Is what he is saying in response there.
I am not familiar with any reports that we put in Mass 200 versus Mass 90 that are different.
That was my understanding too. Whatever you get in the standard version would now be available in the advanced version and vice versa.
And the main difference is the way that the database interacts with the workstations between, let me see if I can say it right, the Sage 100 ERP Standard and the Sage ERP 100 Advanced.
Right, and now our own Lisa Teely has chimed in. She said there has been custom done to sales debt to bring in current and historical detail. A couple of customers already have that. So that's something that we could follow up with Larry outside of the webinar. All right. All right, so I'll get back to wrapping things up here. Like I said, we are recording today's webinar. As soon as the webinar recording has been converted, I'll post that onto our YouTube channel and put a link up there on our website along with today's presentation. And then I'll email everybody to let them know when they're available. And as I said several times, if you can think of any questions after today's webinar, we'd like or would you like to find out any more about the topic, you can email us at sales@dm2.com. I would like to thank Patty, Laurel, and Steve for today's presentation. Good job, everyone. And I would like to thank everyone for attending today's Internal Controls webinar, Part 1, and we'll look forward to having you return next month for Part 2. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.